Well, this request came in by email. A person says, I'm having trouble with how to do smooth gradations when they go in a circle, like the waves in the attached photo. And what brush to use to show the foam. Okay, waves. I really appreciate this person sent me the photo so I have something to go on. So let's see what we can make out of this. Well, look at the photo and you can see what she was talking about here. As the waves crash up against that rock, you can see that curve there, and you can see this value gradation. That's what she means, value gradation. You can see that value gradation that goes from the very light here to the more shadow areas there. I think being created by the big roll of the foam. And you can see that wherever, but here's the thing. Always avoid letting the image get in the way of your knowing what to do. Now, by that I mean, if you're trying, and you've heard me say this over and over again if you've been watching Quick Tips, if you're thinking foam, if you're thinking waves crashing, those things are not going to serve you to help you know what to do. In order to know what to do, describe to yourself what your eyes are seeing. What your eyes are seeing more or less objectively according to the visual elements. So, what are your eyes seeing value do? Here it goes. Right in here, value gradually gets from darker to lighter. And what else is it doing? What is direction doing? And she said curve. Curve is a direction, a directional movement. And we can see this curve right here. So, one thing that I've learned over years and years of experimenting with painting is that if I allow my brush to follow what my eyes are seeing or what the image is doing, I can make it work every time. So that means the person said it, gradating in a circle. Now, what's gradating? Gradating is a gradual change of any kind. In this case, it's value. And so what we'll need to do, first of all, is see what values we're going to need. And we see we have white right there. So I've put white on the palette. Now, instead of trying to get the color there, I don't want to get into other things other than what the person requests. I'm just going to use ultramarine blue because it's a nice dark blue and it behaves very well. It doesn't have any funny idiosyncrasies when we're trying to work with it. It's an easy color to work with. So it's a good color to practice with, and I suggest this kind of practice. Don't wait until you're doing a painting of waves to practice this. It's a technique, and techniques need repetition so that you can get comfortable and feel skillful in knowing what to do with the technique. All right, so what we're going to do first, well, we see it getting very dark right over here, and then but this is gradually changing, and it's right in here that we see that sort of sweep happening right there. So I think what I'll do is bring my ultramarine blue over. Now, usually I have a value line I'm working with, but I'll go straight forward with this one so that I don't make this too long. Okay, so I'm going to pull enough ultramarine blue out in this direction to give me something to work with. Now, I'm going to gradually pull just a little bit of white, just a little bit. I'm going to gradually work this white into the ultramarine blue, very gradually, and just work it. Take the palette knife and pull it towards the center like that, so that you don't mix it all over your palette. It doesn't require this kind of vigorous mixing, just pulling and mixing. And we start with a value, and then we decide, does it need to be darker or lighter to start with? So I'm going to compare that value. I'll take it on the back of a palette knife. I've also shown other quick tips where you can use little test strips. I'm just going to use the back of a palette knife. And if I squint, let's see, that is pretty much in a middle value range, which I think will do the job. Now we can see it gradually goes back, but I'm going to start about right in here for the sake of time. The next thing I'll do, first of all, I'll be sure I have enough of that mixed. So I'll pull a little bit more over right here and just have enough to show you how this works. Now you see I'm pulling that paint from the bottom of the palette so that it doesn't, so I don't have that dark underneath there that might get in the way and hinder what we're trying to do there. Next thing I like to do now, I always like to do this. I don't know, I haven't really watched very close to see what other artists are doing, but I always like to have an edge of the paint that I can work from. So I will usually start out by pulling the paint down in a little slope against the palette so I can have an edge to work with. And so first of all, always dampen the brush. In this case, now this is oil I'm working with. Sometimes I forget to say that. But the same principle works with acrylic and with gouache. With watercolor, you do it a little different. Now, always when you're rinsing your brush, always squeeze it. I always put the brush between my paper towel and take my thumb and fingers and squeeze it and move it back and forth like this so that all that liquid comes out. Otherwise, you're going to have your paint so loose that it will just run all over the place. You won't have any control of it. All right, so I'm going to start there with that with that middle value right in here. And our aim is to get a curve gradating from dark to light. All right, so I'm going to start out with this value. And here's the way I'm loading the brush. Now, this is important too. It's important to control the amount of paint that goes on the brush. And I always like to just pull towards the edge and load both sides of the brush. Look very closely at that and see if you can see what I'm doing there. I don't dig it in like this. You don't have control of the paint when you dig it in vertically like that. You have more control if you hold your brush at a slight angle, about a 45-degree angle, in that neighborhood, doesn't have to be exact, and then just reach for a little bit of paint at a time and pull it into your brush so that you will have control over it. And the next thing I'm going to do is right here, I'm just going to do exactly what that's doing with this value. I'm going to make a circle. And I'll give it 3 or 4 turns. Now, it doesn't work to go like that. I've got to do this because I know there are some habitual things that people will do with their brushes that don't do their paintings any good. This won't work. This won't work. That gives you can't just spot it like that. First of all, this gives you a jerky movement and it just won't translate as a flowing movement. So learn to trust what your brush can do and about the way you load it, and simply start somewhere, move with your arm, move and stop. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that paint out of the brush, not much, and I'm going to just move into the light. And I took the paint out of the brush so I'd have more control over it. I'm going to move into the light. Now I'm going to go back in here and pick up just enough of this to have a value slightly lighter. Yes, and we don't want a big jump because it makes the gradation gradation smaller. Now, so when you have a large area that's gradating, this is the way you do it. If you have a shorter area that's gradating, there's another way. This is what I want to show you. Now, same thing as before. Let's be sure I have enough paint on the brush now. Sometimes talking will slow me down. Okay, and now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to do this. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just come between these two and gently stroke in the seam I'll work backwards, not just in the seam. I start at the seam, work backwards with at least lifting my brush up very slightly as I go backwards, like this. And as I come forward like that. You see, that gives you that curve, that feeling of curve, that sweeping motion. That's directional movement, and that's the brush moving in the direction that the image is moving. Now at this point, you see it begins to kind of straighten out right in there and gets lighter as it's straightening out. And so you describe to yourself what it's doing, and that tells you what to do. So if it needs to straighten out, then I'll straighten it out. And once again, I'm going to get just a little bit less, have this a little lighter, which means a little less blue and a little more white in it. And as it's straightened out, I will straighten out just like this. I'll just straighten that stroke, and then I'll give it just a very slight blend with a very slight curve like that. And then, as we see as it straightens out, we begin to see some movement. And I'll show you just one step at a time. Now I'm going to go a little bit lighter here. And this will be difficult to see because it'll be going in white. And this time I'm just going to come straight down. And this time I'm going to move in this zigzag direction because we see lots of movement going in different directions, although it's all in light. But I will pull the paint out, and wherever that paint goes backwards, I'll take the edge of the brush, the corner edge right there, and just give it a sweeping motion and get that blend. That gives us a blend. So there we go, right like that. And if we continue that kind of a movement, that kind of first of all, tell yourself what's happening there, and then do it here. Then that will then you'll begin to see all that makes sense. Now, was there a second question? That person, oh, brushes. She said brushes for getting the foam. I believe that's what she said. Let me look at that again. What brush do I use to show foam? Look, it's possible to do many things with one kind of brush. I know there's some attitudes out there, but people were trying to sell you brushes that you need a special brush for everything you do. You do not. You can take a general, you can use just a general function, general purpose brush, and you can teach it to do many things. So I like this brush for just general work. Now there are things like thin lines and other things like grassy shapes and things like that we can use other brushes that will do it more easily. But learn to teach your brush to do everything it will do for you, rather than spend money on a dozen kinds of brushes that you may or may not need at all. So this is a rosemary, and this one is a 274. It's called a rosemary flat. You see it has relatively short bristles. It's a blend, synthetic and natural, and some of you are going to bristle against that, but that's okay. Go ahead. And this one's a number 7. Now, this one has the tip, but the point is, it's not too stiff, but it's stiff enough to give me the kind of control I needed to show that. So I can use this same brush. I don't need a specialty. I can use this same brush to show the, I've forgotten again, texture the foam. Yeah, show the foam. All right. Now, first of all, I want to say that this is not the only brush that can do what I just did. The filbert brush that has the rounded tip can do. The only thing that is necessary, or I find helpful, is the degree to which that brush is flexible. So if it's too stiff, it's just going to dig the paint in and pull it away. If it's too flexible, it's just going to glide over the paint. You're going to have trouble making it go on. So either one of these will do that. It's a matter of your personal choice. For the foam itself, here's this kind of thing right here. Again, or here, and all this is foam. Once again, you ask yourself, what are you looking at? What's it doing? And what do you see there? You see values, and you see in this particular one, you see values and you see a top of light up here and some dark down here, and then you see it getting a little bit lighter. And we see it that way because of the dark surrounding it there. So let's see if I can just very quickly show you one way that you can go about doing that. And let's see, I'll go somewhere else. First of all, I'm just going to lay some value in here so that I have value around. That's a middle value, so I need a darker value against that phone. Usually it's going to be the ocean or the sky, or some other thing like that. So I'll just put this in now. That represents not necessarily the same color, not necessarily anything except just the value that we would need there. Now, once again, it's about what you do with the brush. Again, I'll go to the white here. Sometimes I will tint that white with a little bit of orange just to give it a little bit of glow. But I'll just use just the white here and combinations of the white and the blue and try to show you this. Now, first of all, I want to create a value that gradates. Well, again, it's about gradation. So we've got to look at one particular area here. Let's just look right up here in this little area. So I want to create a value that is like the shadow under that phone. And it would go down, let's say about right here. And that's probably, let's see, is that about the same value? Okay. That works. So that's what I'll do. And this time what I'll do, you see what I'm doing with the brush here? I put it next to the canvas and I move it back and forth like this as I push it. You see that? It's on the canvas moving back and forth. It's not doing this. It's just kind of jiggling a little bit. Just like that. Move it back and forth a little bit like that. You see what that does? That gives you sort of an unequal value. And this is what we see there is an unequal value. It's value that has lots of little tiny lights and darks in it. And if you have your brush loaded with two values like I have here, and you saw me do that, then by the nature of the way that brush works, just by pushing it against the canvas and giving a little wiggle, just a little wiggle, as you push it, as you guide it where you see those edges of the darker value. And by it not being the same color, somebody's going to complain. Well, use your imagination, for heaven's sakes. Now, I'm rinsing all that paint out. And get the paper towel once again. Squeeze the dickens out of the brush. Be sure I've got all that dampness out. Now I'm going to move in for I'm moving once again to the edge of the paint and pull it out as I load the brush, just like that. Now, I'm going to use a brush tilted in a slightly different way. Rather than let the edge shape it, I'm going to let this corner shape the edge. So we'll start out like this, and I'll just go right up against that sky, and I'm just going to move that corner. You see what I'm doing there? I'm just gradually moving that corner, not touching it very hard at all, but gradually moving that corner, and I'll come back like this, and right up to the edge of value that I said would represent the sky. You see how it begins to kind of blend like that? And then just let it kind of blend down in some places like that. And come on down, and blend that into that value I just made below. Now sometimes this takes some repetition. What I'll do here is I'll pull the excess paint out of the brush and reload the brush. And as we're loading the brush, we're also shaping it to do what we want it to do. Sometimes you get split hairs like that, but they usually take care of themselves. Okay, once again, we'll start on top right here, and I'm going to come into that. You see what I'm doing here? Just pushing, not hard, barely holding the brush. I'm going to come down and just keep wiggling it. And just turn that brush around. You see like that? And you begin to make those irregular values barely touching. You see there? It communicate foam. I'm going up into the darker area now. As I go up, I'm going to lift the brush, and I'm just going to let the brush sort of just barely touch that sky. You just learn how to communicate with the brush itself, kind of tune in. And I think one of my students recently said it looks like a Zen activity. Well, it is, because your attention is right there on the point of that brush. You turn it around in your hand as you let it make those motions, and then you can just smooth out at the top like that. And you see that begins to look very much like a wave. And I'll wave just a little bit more in here, get a little bit more blended as it goes up in here to make that even. So the more you blend, the more gradated it gets. And there you go. That's sort of like, I hope, sort of like what you need to know. It's a matter of working the brush, no matter whether you're working with no matter what kind of brush you're working with. If you're working with kind of a general purpose brush, it's just a matter of working the brush, the way you hold it in your hand, the way you turn it on the canvas, the way you have it loaded. Now, I think you'll find that's a lot of fun. It's going to be fun rather than stressful. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianeMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.